From all this, or how I generated the information of what was meaningful and what was useful, came from a basic grounded theory. Interviewing the consultants, interviewing the stakeholders after each meeting, doing surveys after the meetings, and identifying those events that were very meaningful and useful. In this instance, I'll just walk you through one of these. This is one of 100 or more little segments of interviews that I captured. Here I see that information on the water table and locating the original floodplain were very useful to this person because it was going to give them the scientific data to make decisions. Where did they get this information? They got that from our presentations where we presented that at these meetings. This code, using in vivo coding, pulled that directly from this interview. The information was most useful to them. And then kind of distilling this into more of a parent code so we have more basic categories using scientific data. And then this category, the notes, just helped to understand what was going on, how their views were manipulating this data. So why was scientific data important for a village official? Because it's going to help them make decisions that guide the future of Lake Marion. Also, surveying the stakeholder, or the water resources management consultants, doing an online survey, asking them what sections of our interaction were the most useful or meaningful. And you can see here that they identified question and answer sessions as less useful, among other ones. And why did they identify this as less useful? Because it was off track, off topic. Lots of times it was scary. It could have been more helpful. And looking at the actual events that took place during these question and answer sessions, we were affected by a lot of other issues, such as the dam removal and the DNR and these threats that were affecting their meaning of place. So they felt threatened by an area they had known since childhood. A lot of them was being threatened and could not potentially be there in the future. And so they were asking questions to which we couldn't necessarily give them answers. And that made these students and the stakeholders a lot of times feel frustrated and combative, as some of these comments get at. Going back to the interviews and the surveys, distilling down what were the most meaningful, using that grounded theory again, not taking Webster's definition or any of the literature, but what were the people talking about when they meant things were meaningful? Stakeholders really loved it when we engaged them. So let them be the facilitators and not just us. Let them run a little overtime or giving them pens and pencils and letting them draw their own ideas. And that leads to being more hands-on, giving them those ideas by letting them write them down or draw. Also, socializing was a huge aspect of being meaningful to these community members and getting out on site and having those informal activities where they could just come and go as they please or talk to those of us that had specialties in certain aspects of the project. Also, communicating with them, outlining when we were going to have our meetings, how are we going to interact with you, those kinds of strategies. And also those that promoted a lot of learning. They've known this place, a lot of them, for their entire lives. However, getting to know it in a different way was very meaningful for them. So having the scientific knowledge where they learned about bugs and insects and habitat and other aspects of the project that they may not have done so otherwise or learned about otherwise. The consultants, however, had a little bit of different views on what was meaningful to them. Informal interactions were the most meaningful, where we could build these relationships through trust. This was an 18-month-long project. It definitely could have been longer, but some of us had to graduate. So building that relationship over time, over the course of these 4 meetings we had. Developing a sense of gratitude as well. We were showing them plans, all this research, having them come out and know that we were doing all of this work and it was for them, and we were investigating some of the ideas they had given us. And showing that appreciation was very meaningful for the consultants. Also promoting a sense of understanding what the community wants and need, and then taking that to account and then feeling some sense of gratitude for it. Also, the hands-on aspect, so getting out and doing the research, interacting with them by drawing maps, those types of strategies. And also promoting a presence, so not only going to these meetings and events we were organizing, but also to other community events You can see here a photo of a kids' fishing day. We went out and helped them organize these events, and also did some of our research while we were out there. So that was also very meaningful. Looking at the useful strategies, the stakeholders appreciated the science behind the project, the confidence that the science gave them, promoting awareness of the project, internal awareness. A lot of people knew about Lake Marion but didn't know all this other stuff was going on. And also our outreach efforts, so connecting the dots between organizations, regional and local, to provide partnerships. Learning was also useful. They were getting the scientific data that would make them, that would let them make decisions, and also the partnerships so they could pursue funding and have the resources to do a lot of these recommendations we were making for them. The consultants appreciated the experience, getting to go out and test some of these theoretical ideas, going out on site and doing this research, generating ideas. So the hands-on strategies again, having the community write down ideas and looking at what kind of things we can extract from that to put in our recommendations and investigate even further. And also one-on-one communication where we explored the history of the community and what had been done there before, specific instances of what Lake Marion had been. Also looking at publicity. We couldn't have done any of this if nobody would have showed up. So looking at getting the community to come there so we could get the information from them was very useful. And also getting feedback. So we're presenting these recommendations and these alternatives to the community. How do they feel about it? What should we maybe look at pursuing further? What should we eliminate? What should we take out of our report? What should we put inside of our report? From all of this, looking back at all the strategies, I developed a more simple way of looking at it, a matrix. Thinking of it as a continuum thing, strategies that are less meaningful and more meaningful, less useful and more useful. And dividing this into a grid so we can see the relationship between these strategies. The yellow are just stakeholders' views, the green are the consultants' views, and the blue are both. So you can see here that the surveys in the website were not very useful or meaningful, potentially because the questions weren't thought out or the website was not accessed by a lot of people because it was a rural community. Also looking at some of the similarities, the mapping and the presentations and the field day, all of these informal strategies and the strategies we got the most information out of fit into this category. Looking at some of the strategies that were differing in opinions, the question and answer sessions, the consultants thought this was less useful and less meaningful because we didn't get a lot of information out of it. We spent a lot of time arguing and other things at those meetings. And then thinking about what the stakeholders were doing at these meetings with their question and answer sessions. They were letting off some steam and letting us know what their opinions were, so they thought that this was very useful and meaningful. Also, interviews were very useful for the consultants. However, they were more meaningful for the stakeholders. So looking at this grid, we can see where our resources were well spent and where our resources were not as well spent. The posters took a lot of time and effort and money to produce. However, they weren't used very much and they weren't very meaningful. The website was the same way. We put a lot of effort and resources into developing our website to communicate with them. However, it was used very little. So looking at this, we can learn what strategies we need to look at improving, what strategies maybe we need to look at eliminating from interaction with the community in pursuit of some of these design processes. The project outcomes, so where we are at, we're writing the report. However, they had to make some decisions already. So they decided to remove the dam based on our presentations and some of the interaction they got with us. Also, the public and nonprofit partnerships that came together. Because of our meetings, they were able to interact in these small groups, talk one-on-one, and develop these linkages between each other's interests, whereas if we wouldn't have had this project, everybody would have been in their own bubble with their own organizations. We also took this information and the charrette processes and developed a very nice park plan from those recommendations. So we actually had them draw what they wanted, and then we took that and pretty much overlaid a map and just drew that for them in a more illustrative way, showing them. This is just one of a few that we came up with for them, so that evaluating all the different strategies that could potentially be located at Lake Marion. We also provided with them some recommendations to keep the water in the lake, among other things. Looking at the lessons that I learned during this research, a pretty big one was evaluate, then adapt to that evaluation. So always talk with the community, call a few of the people that were at the meetings, call the clients, which in this case was the village of Mazomanie, and ask them how could we do things better. Do you want more these processes? What would you like to see more of? And in that is communication and compromise. So looking at the meaningful and useful aspects, what are the most useful and meaningful aspects of the project, and how, and if they don't fit into that upper right-hand box, then looking at ways in which we can push them to that upper right-hand box and make them more useful for the consultants in decision-making, meaningful for a learning experience for those consultants, and also meaningful for the stakeholders in that they get excited about the project, useful for the stakeholders in a sense that they can make decisions and promoting partnerships and move forward with the process. Also compromise on that. So make some things, if they're in the useful category, if you could develop some different strategies to maneuver it so that it's more meaningful but a little less useful, so that it fulfills both of those categories. Also being able to simplify the process. A big finding that I found in this research was that the simpler the process, the easier to explain it. The more time we got to spend on it at the meetings, the more time we got to spend with the community and talking, and the more data and meaning we got out of it. So looking at how can we distill these activities and these strategies to their very essence, so we don't have to spend an hour explaining to them what we're going to do, and just give them the markers and let them run with it. Because a lot of interesting stuff came out of just letting them guide the whole process. And in the nature of the social factors and this conference, these are the people that were involved in my research. Obviously, if we were going to go and talk about the water resources management practicum, the list would be enormous. So I'd just like to thank the Department of Landscape Architecture for sending me here and providing some funding, as well as the Nelson Institute. And these people who were crucial in the development of my research through interviews and guiding my research. So thank you.